Hey everybody, I just thought I'd go back into a Jussie Smollett sentencing hearing here and play some bits and pieces, some of the highlights from it. The lawyers get in here involved and they say a lot of crazy stuff and a lot of stuff that's pretty funny. At any rate, we'll have some good times with it. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dredd to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dredd Show.
All right, first up, here we go.
I'm gonna tell you about girls. They're all over this world. Some have beautiful shapes. I wanna live to be 98. You're somebody to talk to, and I like to look at you.
That's enough of that.
We were doing a specific portion which was about the role of young people in the struggle against apartheid, and I asked the artists who were founders and our board members who would be like a wonderful young artist, someone with great talent and great heart to
And the ability to lay it on with a trowel.
include, and they all suggested Jussie Smollett, and it was in that context that I met Jussie, who at that time was representing her, working on her behalf.
So back in '99, Jussie would have been a younger man.
He was 16.
Right. Even back then, what were your impressions of Jussie?
Well, he was when I called and spoke to him. We wrote a letter asking Journey to participate, and I got a very professional phone call back from someone named Jussie, and I was very impressed with him. And he said, I do public relations for Journey. And then he came into the office to meet me, and in walked this like utterly beautiful young man. And I was like, oh my God, you're a baby.
Yeah, she was expecting somebody 30, because that's probably what Jussie told her.
Jussie, because being raised up and exposed to the arts and entertainment community from a very, very young age as little children, they understood the power that that fame confers, and they also understood the responsibility.
Responsibility? How responsible was it for Jussie to use his power and fame and celebrity status to spread a fake hate crime? Keep in mind, Jussie was very much involved in using his celebrity status to reinforce the importance of the horrors that happened to him. That's the responsible use of celebrity and fame?
Gosh, I think it was around 2006. It might have been late 2005. We needed another staff person. We were a tiny organization, and I hired Jussie then, and he came and worked for me full-time for 4 years.
Did you check his timesheets?
Jussie has many talents. Paperwork is not really one of them.
Faking hate crimes is also not one of his talents, but that didn't stop him from trying. Okay, so we're going to hear from Jussie's brother.
He's just going to read a statement, a narrative.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not going to put him under oath. I don't think it's required, but please, Mr. Smollett.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Your Honor, before I just wanted to say a few things. I don't know if it was done sarcastically, but mentioned my family earlier, Mr. Weaver, about us passing notes and prayer sessions. Trying to understand that my brother right here is on trial. And while this might just be a level 4 felony to a lot of people, under the circumstances, this has felt like the reincarnation of Al Capone's trial, okay? To be honest. And it's not your fault. I'm not trying to say it's your fault, I'm not saying, but the way that this has been, so that's probably the reason you see us sharing notes and doing prayer sessions. My mom's 69 years old. She was born in 1952 in Texas. All right, she knows a thing about racism. She doesn't really need a lecture about the extent of racism. Neither does an openly gay African-American man. All right?
They just can't help themselves. Everything is about race. This was not the time and place to bring up racism. Why? Well, Jussie has been convicted of a crime that was racially based. He tried to spread a hate crime hoax about white people. He is racist. If they were really wanting to get a reduced sentence for Jussie, they should have stayed away from this, but they can't help it. They're so used to talking about race in every conversation that they have that when they get in front of the microphone, they just have to go off on it. And to them, everything is racist. The cops were racist. The judge is racist. The system is racist. But that's not why Jussie was arrested. He was arrested for spreading a racially motivated hoax.
I strongly believe, you know what I'm going to say, I strongly believe in my brother's innocence. But I'm not going to rehash try to relitigate the issues in the case today. Your Honor, I come before you humbly to request leniency when you sentence my brother. Please remember that we are currently living in a time in which we are enduring a vicious pandemic, extreme economic uncertainty.
Are you kidding me? You're going to use COVID? Now look, it's his brother. It's not a trained lawyer. And so I can understand how maybe he thinks that this is actually going to be effective. So I'll go ahead and forgive him for this one. But really, COVID? By the way, when you're talking to the judge and when you ask him, especially, I'm looking for you to give a lenient sentence to my brother, you might want to look the judge in the eyes at that moment instead of reading off a piece of paper. Just my advice.
A major conflict in Eastern Europe and global paradigm shifts taking place everywhere. As human beings, we are collectively worn down. But Jussie Smollett is not at the source of the socio-economic and political problems on Earth.
No, nobody's claiming he is. I mean, we're not sentencing him to death. Okay, he's looking at possibly a jail sentence here, a very modest one. And so no one is claiming that he's the source of all of society's ills, but that doesn't mean we just let him go. Charles Manson wasn't the source of all societal ills, but we put him in prison forever anyway.
On quite the contrary, he is a man who has been a beacon of hope, charity, and philanthropy to his nation and to his community. He has made real efforts in his lifetime to promote equality and love among all of humanity.
No, not among all of humanity. This whole thing of hope and love and stuff, he excluded a certain group from that. And that was white Trump supporters, all right? He tried to frame them. So how much love did he show to them?
He has expressed strong political views and has stood against injustice wherever he thinks it may lie. His criticism of powerful individuals, organizations, and practices does not make him a bad person.
No, but spreading hate crime hoaxes does. And also trying to frame two other people who were innocent as the perpetrators does.
Okay? Or someone who should be punished. It simply makes him an American. I'm sure that Mr. Dan Webb was once on former President Ronald Reagan's radar for his criticism during the Iran-Contra prosecutions, all right? But standing up to powers and authorities in America is what makes us part of what makes us American. And he turned out to have a pretty successful career after he stood up to power. Jussie does not have malice or hatred toward anyone, and it is truly unfortunate that his reputation has received so many negative connotations.
He doesn't have any hatred towards anyone? I find that very hard to believe. I find it really hard to believe that he would go through the trouble of perpetrating a hate crime hoax against a certain class of people unless he really truly hated them, and he does. Don't bullshit us, man.
And he has never received the benefit of the doubt or a proper presumption of innocence. And even though I completely disagree with the jury's decision in this case, I am not attempting to rehash it here. I only want to give support to the point that Jussie should not be incarcerated. Jussie Smollett is my younger brother. I know you're going to think I'm biased. I am 5 years older than he is, and I can remember him at infancy. He has always been a loyal, loving, and creative human being. He is not a threat to the people of Illinois. And in my humble opinion, Jussie is completely innocent, but even for those, once again, who think he is guilty, the crime he has been accused of is not even considered a felony in most states. Furthermore, here in Illinois and in Cook County, disorderly conduct is oftentimes not even prosecuted and charges are frequently dropped. Incarceration of any kind would send the wrong message, especially in a time in which we as a nation have expressed in a bipartisan plurality the desire to see real criminal justice reform and an end to unnecessary mass incarceration, which predominantly affects African Americans, Hispanics and Latinos, and poor and impoverished white people.
Poor and impoverished white people. He threw that in there for a good reason. But you know what? Actually, I'm glad he did. And maybe we should mention this a little bit more. You know what? Impoverished white people, they kind of have it bad too. Okay? In fact, just being poor sucks. If you're poor, the justice system does not treat you very well. It treats you very unfairly. And yes, a larger percentage of blacks and Hispanics are poor, and therefore they get the brunt of it. But this is about economics. It's not about race. If you have no money and you can't afford a good attorney, you're not going to get treated better in any court system. I don't care what race you are.
We also know now that as a nation that calls itself free, we cannot do so while continuing to incarcerate more nonviolent offenders than any other nation in the world. Mass incarceration is also an unnecessary burden to the taxpayers, to law enforcement, and it is simply unjust and wrong. For those who believe that Jussie is guilty once again and needs more punishment, I would also ask you to consider the gut-wrenching and stomach-turning punishment he has already experienced for the last 3 years. The TV show that he poured so much labor and commitment into making a success was ripped away from him even before he was criminally tried. The fact is, the overwhelming majority of mass and online media reporting in early 2019 resulted in a premature assumption of guilt, and the court of public opinion had already convicted Jussie.
Okay, look, you didn't write this, all right? This was written up as part of a larger campaign to free Jussie, and you're reading it. You're his brother, man. Drop that bullshit. Get up there. Tell the judge why your brother is a good dude, the great things that you know about him, how you grew up with him, and think that he's actually got a lot of good future ahead of him. Tell us that. Don't read this crap. This is stuff that was just generated on a petition site or something, and you're reading it. It's not a good look.
In early 2019. For the last 3 years, he has had to live in anxiety and in a certain kind of pseudo form of house arrest. As a public figure, he has had to deal with public scorn and the real security threats associated with being an accused celebrity.
This would have been better read by his lawyers, and they will. They're going to get up there and basically voice the same message. You know, the fact that he faces security threats, the judge doesn't need his brother to tell him that. The judge is wanting to hear about what Jussie is really like as a person, and his brother's in a good position to tell him, but you're not saying these things. Instead, you're going the political route. Again, they just can't help it. They have to go down that hole.
He was, in essence, quarantining almost a year before the COVID-19 pandemic even began. Now, we all know the Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution guarantees the right to a speedy trial. In my opinion, it is unfathomable for me to stand here in March of 2022 pleading with Your Honor not to give my brother jail time for a low-level offense that is alleged to have been committed in early 2019. For those who believe he is...
I'm sure that Jussie has waived his right to a speedy trial so that he could prepare an adequate defense, okay? So, no, there's been no violation of the Sixth Amendment here.
He's guilty once again. Trust me when I say that the punishment he has already received has far exceeded the actual alleged offense that you accuse him of. Your Honor...
That you accuse him of? You're talking to the judge? The judge hasn't accused him of anything. The jury has convicted him.
There's been a lot talked about, restoring public trust. In my opinion, you don't restore public trust by demonstrating to the public that a level 4 felony, which once again is not even what he's accused of, not even a felony charge in most states in America, by giving him a stiff sentence, which includes jail time.
I don't know about that. I think that one way of restoring the public trust in the American justice system is to show people that we're not going to take this crap anymore. That when people go out there and they intentionally break laws and hurt people, that we're going to do something about it. That's restoring public trust in the American justice system, not slapping all criminals on the wrist.
That's not restoring public trust. That's in my opinion, all right? And if you were to go 5 miles in any direction in this area, from this courthouse, and talk to people in the community, you're not going to say, they're not going to tell you, oh yeah, we restored the public trust because Jussie Smollett went to jail. Trust me, it's not going to happen, all right?
I don't know. I think a lot of people, when you ask them, will say, yeah, thank God they put that boy in jail because for the first time, I saw a celebrity actually get punished for something they did wrong. This isn't about just an average black person. This man is a celebrity. And what has been one of the major problems with trust in the American justice system is what? The rich and famous always get away with crime. Well, not this dude. For once, a rich and famous celebrity got nailed. And maybe this will restore faith in the American justice system. Jussie is not a little poor black kid. He's rich, he's famous, and part of the elite. Well, guess what? That didn't bail him out this time.
This is not restoring public trust, right? We are dealing with a lot of things in the world right now, and sending him to jail would not be restoring public trust. So please also keep in mind that, like myself, many people view this case as nothing more than a he said, she said kind of case, right? With no evidence to have warranted his conviction in the first place. With that in mind, Your Honor, I am humbly requesting that your sentencing of my brother not include any incarceration. I myself and my entire family will be eternally grateful. And I thank you for your time.
And again, instead of begging for mercy based on who Jussie is and what kind of person he is, it's all about the politics. Please do not put my brother in jail because of the political situation that we're encountering, because of what's happened to other black people in the past. No, I think the judge wanted to hear about your brother as a person, and you didn't provide it.
I am the proud grandmother of Jussie and his siblings. I felt compelled to come and tell you that the Jussie I know and love does not match up with the media's betrayal of him. And I'm talking to you guys. You haven't done a good job on investigative reporting. I've worked on documentaries. I know what it is. I've gone through the McCarthy period. I marched with Martin Luther King and the March on Washington, and I'm here now.
Would it be contempt of court for those journalists basically say back to her, shut the fuck up?
And so you got to do better. I challenge you to do more investigative reporting. Jussie.
No, the investigative reporting is what allowed us to figure out what he's really about. You wanted none. You wanted this to be buried.
Himself, as you have heard from the testimonials, is a very gentle, kind, and generous young man, and his empathy is infinite, which translates in giving of himself. Jussie has always been active in the pressing issues facing our communities, such as HIV, AIDS, voting rights, and other urgent social problems in America. One Christmas, he went to Flint, Michigan to entertain children who were living with lead poisoning from their drinking water. What the media may not know is that Jussie is what I call a justice warrior. He has been active against
social justice warrior, SJW. Yeah, we know the type.
Injustice all his life, as his mother has, who is an incredible rock for her children. And as my son, their father, who sadly passed away from cancer 7 years ago, only in his 50s. And I know in my heart that my son, Jussie's father, would have wanted me to come here to tell you who the real Jussie is. I also have fought against injustice forever, and I feel it's in our DNA. I attribute this to being Jewish and the persecution of my ancestors.
Oh, okay. So this is all about the Holocaust. Oh, I get it.
The Hebrew words tikkun olam means to repair the world, and that's what I do, and that's what Jussie does. I will end by saying that Jussie is loved and respected by all who know him. And I ask you, the judge, not to send him to prison. If you do, send me along with him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is going to win the day.
Okay? And I thank you for letting me talk.
The judge is like, okay. Yeah, this is a seasoned journalist here, right? Yeah, judge, send me with him. Give me a break, lady. The judge wasn't born yesterday. All right, we're no longer in kindergarten. If Jussie is going to go to jail, you're not going to go with him unless you do something that gets you convicted of a similar crime.
Thank you so much. And thank you all. It's nice to be in Chicago.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Shay, you can help her get back
Thanks.
with the family.
Yeah, thank
Oh, by the way, Jussie just realized the camera's on him.
you so much. They have suffered so much.
See.
Okay. Thank you.
Are the cameras off me yet?
Okay. Okay. The next one. Thank you.
Your Honor, the first letter here is from the organization Black Lives Matter.
Oh, this ought to get good.
Dear Judge Lynn, Black Lives Matter stands in strong support of an alternative to incarceration sentence for Jussie Smollett. We applaud your long-held practice of imposing alternative to incarceration sentences for virtually all Class 4 felonies.
Oh, so they want to avoid incarceration for all Class 4 felonies. Gee, I wonder why. Let's take a look. Class 4 felony. In Illinois, looting carries with it the penalty of a Class 4 felony. So we have Black Lives Matter writing a letter saying, hey, about as far as we're concerned, nobody should have to go to jail for a Class 4 felony. And guess what one of the Class 4 felonies is? Looting. You can't make this up.
Such as Mr. Smollett's, and encourage you to continue this practice in this case. We know that second chance probation, regular probation, and deferred prosecution are all options. As we contemplate what creates a truly safe world, we know that Mr. Smollett's case involves no drugs, no theft, no sex, no property damage, and no physical injury to anyone other than the defendant.
Yeah, no physical injury to anyone other than the defendant? What physical injury did the defendant acquire that he didn't order himself? Good grief. I mean, you think the judge is falling for this?
Despite the attention paid to it by the media, at its heart, this case involves a low-level, non-violent offense. We urge the court to keep this truth in mind when sentencing Mr. Smollett. We know that the cost that will be expended to met out a sentence involving jail time will be much better used providing much-needed community service.
They want him to only do community service.
First came to know Mr. Smollett long before Black Lives Matter's growth into the largest racial and social justice movement in global history. Mr. Smollett has an extensive history in civil rights advocacy and philanthropy. Mr. Smollett personally donated more than $500,000 to black organizations and gave $125,000 in proceeds from his music tour to organizations working for black, LGBTQ+, and women's rights, including.
So he gave away all this money, and yet he pulled off this hate crime because he needed a raise. And by the way, he's going to need some money now, so I hope he didn't give away too much of it.
Most recently, we sat with Mr. Smollett during the anniversary of Trayvon Martin in February 2022, where he flew to Miami to serve as a loving face in the crowd of support families whose loved ones were stolen by police and or vigilante violence.
George Zimmerman was acquitted, dude. Sorry. The very fact that you're mentioning this is a contempt of court in a sense, because what you're saying is that Jussie went down there as part of a protest against an individual who was acquitted. So what you're saying is you don't respect the verdict. I'm not sure I would want to portray that message to a judge.
In short, Mr. Smollett has demonstrated a long-standing commitment to helping others. Incarcerating Mr. Smollett would be solely punitive in nature. Mr. Smollett does not pose a threat to anyone. Thus, we respectfully request that this court impose a sentence that is an alternative to incarceration, and that's sincerely Melina Abdullah, PhD, the director of Black Lives Matter Grassroots.
Marina Abdullah, PhD. I've heard that name somewhere before, so I looked it up. Then I saw, oh yeah, okay, Marina Abdullah is an American academic and civic leader. She is the former chair of the Department of Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA. Now let's take a look at her background. Her father, John Riemann, was a union organizer and self-proclaimed Trotskyist. She's communist. Her mother is Linda Fowler Blackston, and she was raised by Oji Baba Blackston. Her paternal grandfather was Günther Riemann, born Hans Steinecke, a German Jewish Marxist economist and member of the Communist Party of Germany who opposed Adolf Hitler. Oh, yep. As we've always said, what's Black Lives Matter? It's Marxist. There's a reason why communists rise to the top in that organization.
Also have a letter here from Latanya and Samuel L. Jackson. It's very
short. We got Samuel L. Jackson kicking in. You see what I'm talking about? Jussie tried to spread this hate crime hoax based on his celebrity status, right? He thought that people will naturally believe him because he's a big-time celebrity. And guess who's writing a letter for him? Samuel L. Jackson. Another one who thinks his celebrity status is going to carry the day. Well, it didn't. I'm not even going to bother with it.
Dear Judge Lynn, I write as someone who has known Jussie Smollett for over 20 years. I know him to have a strong family background. He is a loving and caring person, and I am familiar with his commitment to community service. It is important to him to use his gifts to support the needs of others. Jussie was raised in a strong and very close-knit family. I urge you to consider several moral issues as you weigh sentencing options. Jussie has no prior felony convictions. He has a history of community service and charitable giving of his time, talent, and treasure. He has sustained a significant loss of income prior to being convicted of any crime. Based on the very public nature of the charges and the trial, Jussie has lost countless career opportunities. I have served as a citizen devoted to having a positive impact on the lives of young men and women in the city of Chicago since 1968. In pursuit of that mission, I have visited the Cook County Jail and several Illinois prisons every year since Operation Breadbasket launched. I have seen firsthand the disastrous impact jail has on far too many young people of color, especially young African American men.
Again, they're pushing the race angle. Big mistake.
Who often see a complete loss of hope in their situations. Since this case involves the alleged actions of a very visible public figure, it presents a unique opportunity to send a message to millions of young Black and brown men that the system cares for them. I see how this works. By not sending a rich celebrity elite to jail, you send hope to all these poor Black kids that the American justice system works. Really, that is their take. Jussie is famous. He's a big, rich celebrity. I mean, he's well known everywhere. And if you don't send this really famous rich dude to prison, it will be a beacon of hope for all these poor Black kids in the underprivileged communities. I can't believe this. I cannot believe he is saying this. First of all, I have never liked this idea of somehow having a sentence send a message. That's not what these sentences are about. It's about justice. It's not about sending messages out to the community. This highly publicized Class 4 felony case can be utilized as a positive teaching moment about how the criminal justice system can work to benefit all in our society. I appeal to you in the spirit of righteousness to consider the impact America's criminal justice system has on young black males who struggle every day to survive the streets of urban America.
Yeah, this sounds like Jussie. Yeah.
We have an obligation as a society to favor restorative justice rather than retributive justice.
Restorative justice? Okay, you know what? You're misusing the term. This is not about restorative justice. And in fact, restorative justice here would involve Jussie going to Trump rallies and then having to listen to white Trump people wearing MAGA hats explain how such hate crimes affect them. And then he would have to do some sort of community action to help these people regain what was lost because of this incident. Jussie's not going to do that. They can't force him to do that. And frankly, that wouldn't work anyway. So this is not about restorative justice. If you're going to use the terms, use them correctly. And yes, I know all about restorative justice. I was involved in the K-12 dealio for many, many years.
Jussie Smollett was convicted of a Class 4 felony, the least severe category of felony in Illinois. A well-established practice in Cook County is to sentence Class 4 disorderly conduct cases to incarceration alternatives. Such alternatives might include second chance probation, regular probation, or deferred prosecution. Additionally, an important consideration in sentencing is the potential for recidivism. Jussie Smollett's lack of felony criminal record, as well as many positive contributions to society, demonstrates that he poses no risk for recidivism.
Actually, the fact that he is completely unremorseful about what happened, the fact that he doesn't even think he did anything wrong, that he claims he didn't do anything wrong, that's actually a very good mark of recidivism. One of the reasons why people end up going back to jail is because they never learned their lesson in the first place. And Jussie has not learned his lesson. He's defiant about it. And so his recidivism is actually pretty high. The only thing that would actually stop him is the fact that he already got caught once and he probably doesn't think he's going to be clever enough to pull this thing off again.
Jussie has a long track record of being deeply engaged and contributing citizen who is committed to helping the most vulnerable in our society, whether persons living with HIV/AIDS and children orphaned by the disease, or children whose health was damaged by the contaminated water in Flint, Michigan. Jussie's commitment to serving the community began as a child. As he found professional success, he continued to donate time and money to charitable causes. Another factor that we urge your honor to consider is that the crime did not involve violence to others. None of the actions charged.
No, it was just an accusation of violent crime committed against himself. So yeah, it wasn't violent, but he claimed it was.
Charge indicate that Jussie ever posed a threat to public safety. Further, Jussie has already suffered. He has been vilified in the court of public opinion. His professional reputation has been severely damaged. He has suffered lost career opportunities, a loss of income, and there are a number of people who rely on Jussie for financial assistance.
That's the thing he should be pounding. That's what this whole thing should have been about. They should have talked about that, okay? But the justice system is racist thing, not a good time for this.
Finally, I am deeply concerned about the physical safety and well-being of a well-known, nonviolent black gay man with a Jewish heritage who may be incarcerated within the U.S. prison system.
Oh, so we should just let him go. If you're black and Jewish, well, you could get hurt in prison, so we shouldn't send them to prison. Okay, get out of jail free card for anybody that might get hurt in prison. Now, look, I have no trouble with them having him in protective custody. I mean, that's fine. I'm not looking for him to get hurt, and I think it's despicable if anybody is looking for him to get hurt. But the point is that he should have thought of this before he pulled off this crime.
For all the foregoing reasons, I believe the only fair and just outcome is to sentence Jussie Smollett to a non-incarceration alternative. With respect, we respectfully urge you to do so. Rainbow Push Coalition welcomes the opportunity to serve as a place for Jussie to resume his desire to serve the community.
Oh, yeah, the Rainbow Push Coalition is a place where we could have Jussie come in and do his community service. And of course, you know what that means? Jussie wouldn't have to do a damn thing. They would party it up. They would love it. Here's our celebrity elite hanging out with us, partying. That's what that would entail. Give me a break. If he's going to do community service, they need to send him to somebody who is not on his side, who's going to make him work.
During the first year of COVID, we served more than 4,000 meals each day. We have a program that is designed to meet some of the issues homeless individuals face each and every day in the city while trying to survive. We believe that those who are impacted by the criminal justice system deserve an opportunity to be restored to a meaningful life and lives throughout community engagement and public service. We have worked diligently to transform the lives of young people in our Push Excel programs. I believe that Jussie has much to give to America, and this case is a stumbling block that should not become a setback to his future. We do not want Jussie to become another prison statistic.
Again, with the threat. If he goes to prison, he might get hurt. Well, again, Jussie should have thought of that before he pulled this thing off.
As he has way too much to offer. I stand ready, along with the board of directors and the several thousand members of the Rainbow Push Coalition, to support Jussie Smollett in his journey to wholeness. We want to assist this court in meting out justice for Jussie Smollett. Signed, the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr.
Jesse Jackson? Another one you probably don't want a letter from. It's too polarizing. Why can't it be somebody normal? Why can't you have a normal person write a letter? Somebody who's not a famous Hollywood actor or a civil rights activist who ran for president or a Marxist leader of Black Lives Matter. Why can't you have normal people write them? That would mean a lot more. And in fact, a poor Black person from the neighborhood writing a letter would have a lot more impact. As a judge, I would look at that far more favorably. Because I don't care what Samuel L. Jackson thinks.
Your Honor, I have a letter from Lauren Caseberg on behalf of the Illinois Innocence Project. To the Honorable Judge Lynn, I submit this letter in my personal capacity as co-director of the Illinois Innocence Project. This letter is provided in support of a non-custodial sentence for Jussie Smollett, and also to inform the court that if there is a community service component to Mr. Smollett's sentence, he would be welcome to do so under my direct supervision at the Illinois Innocence Project.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I bet you would love to have that. And I know that Jussie would too. Jussie probably wouldn't even have to clock in.
At the outset, I want to be clear that the jury found Mr. Smollett guilty, and I respect the jury's verdict. I write to you today regarding his sentence and...
That's actually a good thing to write. Good deal. They found him guilty. I respect the verdict. The other ones should have been writing that in theirs as well.
Urge the court to issue a just and fair sentence to Mr. Smollett. In high-profile cases, there is often a tone surrounding a case that seems to call for the harshest possible punishment because of the attention the case has garnered. I would urge Your Honor to silence out those loud voices and see Mr. Smollett for who he is, as a person before you, a human being. The old adage applies here: justice is the law tempered by mercy. Here, while the law may permit you to sentence Mr. Smollett to prison, incarcerating him would not be just. The relentless media coverage of this case is a unique punishment in and of itself for Mr. Smollett. He will carry the stain of this case for the rest of his life and spend the rest of his life and career working to rebuild and establish his credibility, his reputation, and good name. That lifetime sentence is something this court should consider as a unique punishment already dealt to Mr. Smollett in the court of public opinion. In fact, cases with media attention provide an opportunity for the court to show the public that justice, fairness, and mercy applies to everyone, no matter who they are. If the system doesn't treat a high-profile defendant justly, then what can be expected for the rest of us? If Mr. Smollett, who has no prior felony convictions and no violent background, is sent to prison on a Class 4 conviction, then what does that mean for an unknown defendant who has no one watching or advocating for him? This, of course, intersects with the disparate manner in which people of color are sentenced.
There we go. It was only a matter of time. I was listening to this, I was thinking, hey, this is actually a pretty good letter. They're talking about the fact that Jussie may be rich and he may be famous, but that's no reason to send him to prison. He should be treated like everybody else, and everybody else is not sent to prison. That's a good message. But they can't help themselves. They have to turn on the race sooner or later.
With black men receiving the most disproportionately high sentences. During a time in which leaders around our state have put a focus on lessening the incarceration rates in Illinois prisons for justice-related reasons as well as due to COVID-19, there is no justifiable purpose to send Mr. Smollett to prison on a Class 4 conviction.
Get ready. Get ready. This is the one that told everybody that the judge lunged at her in a sidebar. Ha ha, this is going to get good.
So with the court's indulgence, I have 2 letters. The first is from Oscar-nominated winner of 4 Primetime Emmys and 2 Grammys and political activist, Alfre Woodard.
Another Hollywood celebrity. God, come on. Give us a real person here.
Dear Judge Lynn, I hope you and your loved ones are well and are finding a way forward in this time.
Well, that's an interesting intro.
I am writing to you today as someone who is more than a friend to Jussie Smollett.
More than a friend. That's interesting.
I am in my 60th decade. And when he was a young teen, as we worked, and we met when he was a young teen, as we worked together to bring shelter, health, and education to South Africa's AIDS orphans. Jussie referred to me as Mama Alfre. It is out of that bond that I make this appeal to you. Jussie was convicted of a Class 4 felony. I know it to be the least severe category of felonies in Illinois.
Tell us about Jussie. Tell us about why he doesn't need to go to prison. Let the lawyers talk about the impact of a Class 4 felony and who gets those and who doesn't.
I also have learned it is a well-established practice in your county as well as around the country to sentence Class 4 disorderly conduct cases to alternatives to incarceration.
It's also traditional for criminals who have been convicted to be remorseful and ask for mercy from the judge, to admit that they did wrong and express remorse for what they have done. That's also a traditional practice. Jussie didn't do that. So why should the judge do the traditional practice on his end?
Including second chance probation, or deferred prosecution. I respect that an important aspect a trial judge must consider when sentencing someone is the potential for recidivism. Jussie's lack of a felony criminal record, as well as his many years of humanitarian work on behalf of communities in need, is a strong signal that he carries no risk of recidivism.
And as I mentioned before, the fact that he has no remorse, claims he didn't even do it, is a very good example of how he probably is rife for recidivism.
So the last letter is from Derek Johnson, who is the president and chief executive officer of the NAACP.
Again, another person who is not just a normal person. It has to be somebody famous.
Dear Judge Lynn, I write today in my capacity as president and CEO of the NAACP. Formed in 1909, the NAACP is the oldest and largest civil rights organization in the United States.
Yeah, so what? What does it have to do with Jussie? Get to the point.
In this nation, Black people are incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of whites and frequently receive disparate sentencing.
Again, this is not the time and place for this. Not for the type of crime that Jussie committed. Again, I'm telling you, he tried to commit a hate crime, a hoax against a certain race of people.
In Illinois, Black defendants convicted of a felony were more likely than white defendants to be sentenced to prison at a 57% and 39% rate, respectively. A mainstay of our organization continues to be advocacy for fair treatment of persons of color by the criminal justice system. This brings us to the subject of the upcoming sentencing of Jussie Smollett.
Again, this is defiance, right? This is perfect for Jussie. Jussie is defiant. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do it. I don't give a shit. And this is defiance, the letter. It's all about getting back in the judge's face.
It would be an understatement to say that an inordinate amount of attention has...
And no physical injury to anyone other than himself. Gee, where have we heard that before? Oh, that was in the other letter. In other words, this is boilerplate. They copied and pasted their letters from probably some petition that was sent out online. I mean, how does the judge feel listening to the same words being spoken over and over again in these letters? Kind of cuts down on the genuineness of the message, doesn't it?
Despite the attention paid to it by the media, at its heart, this case involves a low-level, nonviolent offense.
Again, low-level, nonviolent offense. Have we heard that before? Yeah, they're all repeating it. Again, this was sent out probably through an email, and they all decided, well, let's put this in our letter. Again, this was a campaign to produce these letters, all right? So the fact that they all sound alike makes total sense. But it doesn't do much for your message if you're saying the same thing as somebody else is saying. How heartfelt.
By way of background, Mr. Smollett has an extensive history in civil rights advocacy and philanthropy. Mr. Smollett personally donated more than $500,000 to Black organizations and gave $125,000 in proceeds from his music tour to organizations including the organizations working for Black, LGBTQ+, and women's rights.
Yeah, we've heard that one before too. Again, it's all from a letter being sent out to have people sign and send in. Yeah, that's okay for like the population that may be illiterate or maybe not really good letter writers. But these are people that are heads of organizations, Hollywood actors and stuff. They can't write their own fucking letters? Seriously?
Including the Black AIDS Institute, which provides high quality, direct HIV services to Black people, the Flint Kids Fund, which funds programs aimed to address and mitigate the impact of lead poisoning and the trauma suffered by children in Flint, Michigan, the Trayvon Martin Foundation, whose main purpose is to provide emotional and financial support to families who have lost a child to gun violence, the Know Your Rights Camp, whose mission is to advance the liberation and well-being of Black and brown communities through education, self-empowerment, mass mobilization, and the creation of new systems that elevate the next generation of change leaders. In 2018, Mr. Smollett surprised the 6-year-old double amputee with a wheelchair-accessible van after learning that the child's school district did not own such a vehicle. Mr. Smollett has been a recognized supporter of the Human Rights Campaign, a civil rights organization that strives to end discrimination against LGBTQ+ people and realize a world that achieves fundamental fairness and equality for all.
All right, I'm going to tell you this. I don't know what her lawyer skills are. They can't be too good, but this sucks. There was a story there about Jussie Smollett buying a van for a double amputee or whatever. Great story. But what did she do? She just read it off. Come on, drop the letter. Look at the judge and say, I want to explain something to you from this letter. He actually bought a van for a kid, a double amputee who didn't have the money. The school district didn't have the money for a van. Jussie went out and bought him one. I think that that's kind of important. I think it's something that you really should consider. I don't know if it's possible to bring in other people to read these letters in a court of law. I mean, maybe it's only the lawyers that can do this, but I would have brought somebody else in. This sucks. It's just read off in this monotone voice, has no passion, no emotion, and it's putting everybody to sleep.
Lest there be an argument that such donations and activities were made as a part of any PR damage control, such acts all preceded the 2019 events that resulted in charges being brought against Mr. Smollett. In 2018, after learning that Bennett College, an all-women's HBCU, which stands for Historically Black College and University, was on the brink of losing its accreditation, Mr. Smollett and his brother helped the institute raise the funds needed to win accreditation. In fact, the college needed only $5 million. Mr. Smollett and his brother led a campaign that was so successful they raised $8 million. Mr. Smollett's civil rights work began when he was a child who served as an NAACP youth volunteer.
Again, boilerplate. That was in the other letter.
In 2016, Mr. Smollett won the Chairman's Award at the NAACP Image Awards. The Chairman's Award is given in recognition of individuals who have committed themselves to acts of public service while using their platforms to create effective change. In short, Mr. Smollett has demonstrated a long-standing commitment to helping others. We believe that incarcerating Mr. Smollett would be solely punitive and would serve no purpose.
Solely punitive. Yeah, we've heard that in the other letter too. But guess what? That's what judges do. They punish. There's nothing wrong with that. He's been convicted of a crime. What's wrong with having something that's solely punitive? You punish the person for committing the crime. That's part of the reason why we send people to jail. There are other reasons, but that's one of them, and it's legitimate.
As this court may know, in 2015, Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner created a criminal justice task force to identify areas of the criminal justice system that could be reformed that would result in a 25% reduction in the prison population by 2025. One such proposal...
Did it reduce crime? If it didn't reduce crime, I don't want to hear about it. I can reduce the prison population by 100%. Just empty the jails. Is that a great thing? Well, if you can do that and reduce crime, yeah, that's wonderful. But if you don't, and if crime has increased as a result of it, then it's not a good thing. California is finding that out.
Proposal for reform was reducing the incarceration rate of persons convicted of Class 4 nonviolent felonies. This is precisely the type of offense of which Mr. Smollett was convicted. Finally, Mr. Smollett does not pose, nor has he ever posed, a threat to anyone. Thus, we respectfully ask, assuming this court is inclined to sentence Mr. Smollett to anything other than a monetary fine or a suspended sentence, that the court sentence Mr. Smollett to probation and mandatory community service. Respectfully submitted, Derek Johnson, President and CEO of NAACP. Thank you. Thank you, Judge, for your time.
All righty. I was going to do the rest of this tonight, but I'm tired, and so I'm going to go ahead and do it some other time. We're going to hear from Jussie's lawyers, get up there and explain why they don't think he should go to jail, and it's a real laugher. Subscribe to my channel and like my video.